Morning, good morning. Welcome to TSK F1. My name's Rich, and this is your 30-minute dose of the latest Formula One news. We're going to be talking about Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso's lack of relationship. We're going to be talking a little bit about Sebastian Vettel. We've also got some more news about Alonso. And we're going to be first kicking off with some news around Adrian Newey. Well, it's just quotes coming out around Adrian Newey, which are really quite interesting actually, because he's talking about the different cars that we're seeing within Formula One. Please do smash a like on the stream and also subscribe to the channel. Good morning, everyone. So, Adrian Newey was sort of thinking back to what he initially said about the regulations that we've just had the first year of. And he said that they were far too restrictive and they weren't right, and it's not the direction Formula One should be going in. And generally, he wasn't a fan. But some quotes have emerged that I just found them really interesting. I know even if you're not a Red Bull fan, most people really respect what Adrian Newey has done for the sport. And he said about the new regulations, the chassis and the front wing are in a very narrow framework, but then there are areas with a surprising amount of freedom. These include the sidepods and the floor. The different sidepod shapes are also easy for the fans to distinguish, which is a good thing. And he said how the zero pods from Mercedes were a real surprise, and that it was a loophole that they'd overlooked. We had overlooked that loophole, and they got better and better over the year. Adrian Newey continues to say it means none of us is absolutely right, and there has to be something better. The Mercedes was a real surprise. Now, I don't think that's Adrian Newey particularly saying, Mercedes have got it bang on. I think he's really pointing to the freedom which teams can have, while admitting that he expected to see bigger gaps with the new regulations. But he then admits they didn't have time to look at the Mercedes concept in detail. Under the budget cap, you no longer afford that luxury. Um, and I just find it interesting that the direct quotes about the Mercedes from Adrian Newey, and he goes on to say, with the Mercedes, it will be the case that everyone will only copy the concept when it becomes a lasting success. We will continue to develop our concept because we know it best. Now, I think the language he's using there is very important. That he isn't saying he knows his concept is right, and he's not saying the Mercedes one is right. Because he goes on to say, but I don't dare to say whether our way is the best. It is quite possible that someone else with a better idea is just around the corner. Think of the double diffuser. That was a loophole that was always there. It just wasn't discovered. And I really like these quotes from Adrian Newey because while he's not specifically really addressing much, I think he is still sort of alluding to the fact that there is freedom within the regulations for all teams still to find something, and it makes me think that he potentially has something up his sleeve as well. Just the way he's talking about loopholes and that the double diffuser wasn't discovered, and that the Mercedes was surprising. It makes me feel like Adrian Newey thrives off loopholes and grey areas in technical regulations. So it just makes me think that he may be doubling down on these regulations, seeing where the concept that they've gone with might be benefited by finding some loophole in the regulations. I mean, he's made a very successful career of finding these loopholes and exploiting the loopholes. Now, that that statement that I've just made could be taken as like he's some kind of cheater. That isn't what I mean. The most successful teams find the gaps in the regulation for for performance and move forward. But I'll be very interested to see because as he says that that I've said this as well, to be honest, because I think it's just decent analysis to say that I've said teams will converge on a design. Will it be next season? I don't know. Will the cost cap be prohibitive in them converging next season? Is the Red Bull way the best way? Is the Mercedes way the best way, or is the Ferrari way the best way? And I'm wondering if wouldn't it be a shock if after a season of people saying it was a terrible idea, wouldn't it be interesting if the Mercedes way is the way to go? I mean I don't know. I'm just saying, but he isn't poo-pooing it. He was just saying it's a surprise and it's a loophole he didn't spot. And then he reminds us about the double diffuser loophole that nobody spotted for many years. It just makes me think Newey might be just, looking for it. As an engineer, I bet when he first saw the Merc, he was very interested in it and the underlying principles that Merc were going with. Yeah. And I think it's great as fans because I think obviously we've seen what the Red Bull has done this season, but are we going to see a grid of Red Bull clones next season? I hope not. I hope that, Ferrari have more legs in their concept and that Mercedes have more legs in theirs and Red Bull do in theirs, and we can continue to have differing shapes and looks on the grid because I think that's good for the sport. When you get to the end of some regulations, before a major regs change, you tend to see a grid of basically, to the layman, cloned cars. They all look the same, but I don't believe that to be the case this season at all, and it's been really good. But that's really what I wanted to share there, that he wasn't fully, well, he didn't poo-poo the idea of the Mercedes one, and Adrian Newey talking about loopholes. It just wouldn't surprise me if at the beginning of next season they've got a little surprise. They've got a little surprise, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too much into it, and it is just innocent quotes made by Adrian Newey. I don't know, but it's just the language used. It made me think: is he cooking something up? I don't know. Then again, he maybe won't want to change the concept, which has just absolutely walked it. I mean, it's his most successful car, so who knows? Now, just a little bit about Albon. I just stumbled upon this, and I don't think Albon has the hugest fan base, but nobody really dislikes him either. He seems a nice guy, and he's got a turn of pace. So I thought I'd bring that to you guys. That he was talking about he needs the winter break because I believe it was appendicitis he got earlier in the season, Italian Grand Prix, appendicitis, and he suffered respiratory failure after the surgery. But he says that he needs the winter to get to 100%. We didn't have the time to train really to get back to that fitness. So yes, realistically speaking, Singapore was tough. Japan was 75%. And after Japan, I felt pretty good. So that hair reminds me of Rufio from Hook. I've never thought that. So he was basically driving the end of the season like pretty unfit, and that's hardly a surprise. But fair play to him for cracking on and doing it honestly, because for a day or two, it did seem like his condition was really quite serious. I mean, respiratory failure doesn't sound good, does it? But um, he has recovered, and he just needs his fitness. Um, you know, if it was any of the top drivers, it would be far bigger news. I agree, John. It was downplayed quite a lot, which you know, it's it's crazy, really. Um, though Albon went on to say about Monza, I feel like the biggest one was being healthy for Monza. That would have been my main points opportunity. Other than that, I'm not sure. I really do feel like in the moments where we've had the chance to score points, we have, and I think most people, if you were looking at Williams, they Latifi, but I think Albon did a solid job. Hopefully, Logan Sargent has a turn of pace and is a good driver, and maybe we might see Williams nicking some points and more in the next season. Hopefully. Now, I haven't really. I've got a few. I've got a couple of bits to say about Seb Vettel because I can't let him go, guys. I can't let him go. So, what I did want to just let everyone know about was you may have seen it. I only saw it this morning, and I'm glad I had enough time to watch it. Aston Martin have released a video on YouTube. I think it's called One Last Time, and it's pretty much just a tribute. Some would say maybe it's a little bit self-indulgent to Seb. I don't know. But to me, it was a very lovely, well-made, high production value tribute to Sebastian Vettel on the official Aston Martin YouTube. Please do check it out. It's like 25 minutes long, with quotes from various team members and some behind-the-scenes footage, and things like that. And I just wanted to bring that to people's attention because I think if you like Sebastian Vettel, I think if you just want a bit of F1 sort of viewing, I think it's worth a watch to see. Now, I am going to make a video maybe today about the new Aston Martin facilities because we've recently had more news about the new Aston Martin facilities. So I am going to make a video about that later today. But the other thing that I wanted to just sort of speak about with Seb Vettel is that within the video that I just mentioned, one of I think it was the racing director. I've forgotten. I did write it down in the description of this stream. Said that Seb was very, very, very hardworking, and essentially he was almost like having another engineer within the team. And we were talking about the other day. We were talking about McLaren and Lando Norris and Piastri, and whether, while they are amazing drivers, are they the correct two drivers to move McLaren forward? And I think what they were saying about Sebastian Vettel shows the value of an extremely experienced driver of the right mindset, because there you have Aston Martin. They want to move forward. They're an ambitious team. They have a new factory being built. They have a new wind tunnel being built, and they want to move forward. And there they've got a driver who works very hard and is almost like having another engineer on top of being one of the sport's all-time greats, and that kind of person is extremely valuable. And it does make me wonder whether, again, McLaren have that expertise in the driver department, because it's a lot of pressure really on young Lando Norris's shoulders. Because what is he, 23? He might rise up. He seems an intelligent guy for sure, but he doesn't have the experience of an Alonso, of a Seb Vettel. And I guess maybe that's why they had Danny Rick. Maybe they were expecting a little bit of that experience there. But I just thought it was an interesting thing, given the conversation we had on the morning show last week at some point. The value of these drivers is massive. Sometimes it really is, and the effect that they have. Now, what I wanted to bring you next is Fernando Alonso. Hello. He had his first test in the Aston Martin. Article coming out this morning. Christian Horner said Seb's attention to detail and analysis of data was mad, so they named the data center as the Vettel building. Is that true, John? I didn't know that. They do say in this video that Seb Vettel does the competitor analysis at Aston Martin, or he joins in with it, which is mad. What I just wanted to bring, really, just because it's a story that was coming out this morning, it's nothing crazy, but the Aston Martin team principal, Mike Crack, saying that Alonso was very impressive. They're very impressed with the efficiency of transmitting his messages, and it was straight to the point at all times. It was very friendly and open, transparent, I think, in both directions. So we're very pleased how the day went. Asked about the differences between Alonso and Vettel, he said, yes, they're different because they've got different backgrounds. One is Latin, one is German. That makes a big difference. But I mean, what they have in common is the focus on improving, the focus on making progress, and also isolating what makes us progress instead of maybe just being detailed. So some similarities, but also some differences. And basically, I think that's interesting because, again, it ties in with what what I've just been saying about other teams with younger drivers. I think, a couple of years ago, narratives seem to have changed a little bit, but a couple of years ago, everyone was talking about how old drivers need to get out of the way and let young drivers through. And I think that's a naive, an ignorant stance, frankly, because I think certain teams need that experience. Now, one way to look at it is that these top drivers can't get a top car anymore. Like you couldn't, even if Alonso is one of the best, you couldn't put him in a top team now. You just couldn't. It wouldn't work. You're not putting him next to Lewis Hamilton because obvious reasons. You couldn't put him in the Red Bull because Max is number one. You couldn't put him in the Ferrari because Leclerc is number one. So they have to go somewhere. And their experience is invaluable to a team like Alpine, to a team like Aston Martin, who are on the rise. And who knows, maybe they get lucky with the performance and they can snatch some good results. Maybe they can snatch some good results. It doesn't shock me that he was saying that he was very direct on the radio, though. It really doesn't surprise me. I'm just going to find the next quotes now. The final. I mean, this is somewhat old news now, I guess, because it was said a day or two ago, I think. But I just wanted to pick up on it because I think Ocon has said 98% of the work was on Ocon's shoulders, on his back. 2% was on Alonso. I was overworked. I was doing all the development in the simulator, the marketing trips. Now, I can't help but feel like if I was in Formula One for a long time, I'd get it into my contract that I did as little marketing as possible, because there does seem to be a lot of it around Formula One, right? And I was chatting to John in the chat yesterday about this, and one of the big reasons that Lewis Hamilton left McLaren, it wasn't the only reason, but one of the reasons, was the amount of marketing that was required in the Ron Dennis days of McLaren. It was crazy. And John reminded me that Jenson Button commented on that as well when he drove for them. So I don't think it's an entirely shocking thing that the younger driver is made to do more marketing stuff and simulator stuff, honestly. Because I'm sure that there are a couple of ways to look at this, tying it in with the other stuff that we've talked about. Like maybe Ocon's in the simulator, but maybe Alonso is in like engineering meetings and things like that. Maybe, but I do not I do not believe that Alonso just turns up to a circuit and drives a car. I don't believe that to be true. And while Ocon is saying 98% of the work was on his back, I feel like he feels 98% of the work was on his back, but the reality was somewhat different. And I'm quite sure that Alonso brings value to whatever team is in different ways, other than marketing and doing simulator work. Now, you know, I don't know. He says he'll keep his respect for him, but it's good that he's going to Aston Martin so that we're going in our separate ways. They kind of fell out. Now, some of the social media commentary I've seen on this is entirely blaming Alonso, and yes, I'm an Alonso fan, but I thought I'd bring some balance to it. You know, Ocon has form. Ocon has form of not being the best teammate. If we remember him racing Perez on multiple occasions, you know, and Perez generally comes off as a fairly chill guy. You know, I don't think you'd put Perez in this wildly aggressive. I mean, yeah, Alonso's fiery. Everyone knows that, but you wouldn't put Perez anywhere near that. You know, and for once, I'm not sure I'm all on board with the Alonso always causes this in his team camp, you know. But next season, look, next season will be interesting, obviously, with Alonso teaming up with Lance Stroll. That could be interesting. But yeah, God knows how many points they cost the team. Ocon and Perez incident. Exactly, John. I think sometimes these things need a bit of balance. Look, I'm not saying Alonso was innocent in any of this, for sure. We've seen comments from Alonso, right? The thing is, the way Alonso seems to be, he seems to like a little bit of drama. He seems to like that. He just does. He seems that type of individual. Some people do. It's not really my vibe, even though I'm a fan of his. And the way Alonso, yeah, pretty sure Alonso helped Ocon to get an F1 win. Yeah, Ocon's forgotten that, hasn't he? Just saying. But I feel like Alonso is the type of character that he would do it for the sport of it. And I don't mean Formula One, I mean the mental sport of it. I feel like if he knows he gets under the skin of someone, and like under the skin of Ocon, Alonso knows he's on his way out. I feel like Alonso is the type of dude that would just poke that on purpose for his own fun and enjoyment, just to create that. I don't know. It's not what I'm like, but I do get that impression from Alonso that he would just, oh, there's a little chink. Let's push that. You know, I could be wrong, but if I've got that impression, I don't think I'm the only one. I think Ocon really rubs his teammates the wrong way, which in turn gets backs up and become more frustrated with him. Probably. But I just found it interesting because one of the observations I had as well, I don't know if anyone ever watched the McLaren series when it was Stoffel Van Dorn and Alonso. I think it was on Amazon. And Stoffel was doing a lot to do with the program, and he was doing a lot of PR, he was doing a lot of meet and greets. You barely ever saw Alonso in that type of situation, and it was very clear Alonso doesn't do that kind of stuff. And you know what? If he gets a contract that way, I don't think Ocon can be pissed off. He can only be annoyed at himself that he doesn't have that contract, that he hasn't had the foresight to get that contract. And I think that is one of the things that experience and performance brings you. You know, like Lewis Hamilton. Say Lewis Hamilton decides he's going to have a career-ending couple of years at Ferrari, and he goes, "Look, Ferrari, I'll come and drive for you, but look, I'll do one Shell advert for you, and I'll do two meet and greets like for sponsors over the year, but I'm not doing any of that." Ferrari are going to go, "Yes," but then if Mick Schumacher ended up driving for Ferrari, say this season, and he said that, they'd be like, "No, no, you are doing them." And I think, you know, I don't know. It just seems a little bit silly. You can see the enjoyment he got in Brazil when Max, they had an altercation that he was just laughing. Yeah, well, yeah, indeed, indeed. Well, I don't know. That was just my take and observation on the Ocon Alonso stuff, really. You know, I would imagine. Look, and I still haven't done the season-ending stuff really and ratings, but for next season, I wouldn't be at all shocked if you saw Aston Martin take a huge leap with Alonso behind the wheel, because they've got some staff there now that have been embedded that didn't get to work particularly on this season's car, only the upgrades, but they will have been embedded long enough to really influence next year's car. And I'm talking like head of aerodynamics and people in design and people in the general management of the team from like Red Bull and Mercedes and Alpine, and they've really recruited heavily. So Ocon might be looking at Alonso's gearbox next season if his Alpine's still running. And I speak as I like Alpine, but be interesting to see. But there we go. That's your day's news, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I think I will try and put a video out later on about Aston Martin's new factory, because more information has come out about that. And I think it'd be interesting to share that with you, because I don't think people are fully aware of just the steps which Aston Martin are taking and where they're likely to be in a few years. But I'm going to be live over on Facebook Gaming on Pit Lane Sim Racing in just a few moments with F1 Manager. Thank you so much for joining me. Keep an eye out here for a video later on Aston Martin, and I'll see you later. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.